All right, you're up, Vlad.
Okay. Good evening and good afternoon. I'm Vladimir Kessler, Director of Kessler Design Center, joined here with my colleague Mariah Randall, who is our Director of Operations and Community Outreach. And this is our first community presentation meeting of the spring semester. We appreciate all of you who have been able to come in person, and those of you who are joining us online for this presentation. The presentation is going to take 20 minutes approximately, and then the rest of the interaction will be in person for those who are visiting at the Chamber of Commerce, Northeast Chamber of Commerce. With that, I also would like to thank Bobby Baker, Mike Aloni for their help in setting up this meeting and hosting us today. It's really important for us to be part of the community and present to the community. For those of you who are not familiar with the Kansas City Design Center, Kansas City Design Center is a non-for-profit service learning urban design program that partners with local civic leaders, design professionals, and local universities to promote design excellence in Kansas City. The purpose of this project is really to propose a vision for a community-based vision for repurposing for the reservoir and creating new public space for the community and the city as a whole. KCDC has done this project, the version of this project has done in 2014, and we have been approached subsequently by the community, especially Benzo Heights, asking to take a second pass of the project so that we would have a chance to kind of bring it closer to the possibility of vision that is implementable. And in that, we have worked with community and Parks and Department to generate an application for a grant from NEA, which we have secured, and that has now enabled us to currently be engaging on the project together with the support from the city. It is important for us to clarify that KCDC is an academic institution and that we provide visioning studies that help community to kind of advance their causes and move forward with improving the quality of urban life in Kansas City. In that, our projects are not subject to physical implementation. Their real purpose is to kind of help community envision their desires and be able to further articulate and work with the city and other stakeholders towards implementation. And KCDC, in that sense, remains committed to continue to work with community to see that vision come through. The important thing for us to define is a couple of following things. It is a fortuitous situation that at the moment, there are a couple of parallel projects going on. And we want to make sure that there is no confusion between what we are doing and what other agencies are doing at the moment. So there is kind of complete understanding. But also we think this is a very kind of fortunate moment that there's a couple of different initiatives going on and plans relative to Kessler Park as a whole. The first one is North Terrace Lake Project, and some of you might be involved with that now that it was initiated by a high school, elementary school student, right? What told is, I forgot, Jack is 12, is 11, who has been, he's a remarkable member of, young member of this community, who's very invested in improving the quality of the North Terrace Lake project, which is ongoing now and has secured some PIPE funds to move forward and create some kind of needed restoration and turn this service back to the community. And we have, though we are not part of the project, we are collaborating and including the project. In addition to that, many of you know that there is a master plan going on now. It's being commissioned to Hoxie Collective, and they're currently working on my master plan for the Kessler Park. And with that, Mike, something else? And I will, with that, I'll turn it to Reagan Joggers, who is member of the Hoxie Collective, to explain their master plan. And before I do so, I just want to make sure that explain that KCDC in this project is working very closely with the community. This is a community-based project. We want to make sure that there's feedback and input that's incorporated in our design development. It comes by way of community. And also it's important to stress that none of the existing functions of Kessler Park, especially reservoir areas such as disc golf, are going to be adversely affected or changed by our project. So with that, I'll turn it to Reagan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Reagan. I'm a community planner with Hoxie Collective. So as Vlad mentioned, we are going to start the Kessler Park master planning process here pretty soon. The project hasn't started yet, so if you haven't heard about it, that is why. It should start here in a few months. The difference between this and the KCDC project is, of course, that it's a professional contract with the Parks Department, but we will be building off the work that the KCDC students have done. Although this plan is more about connecting the different pieces of the park. So right now the park's kind of disconnected. There's a bunch of different parks and it's kind of hard to move between them. So that'll be one of the big focuses of that. Let's see. I guess the big focus of it will be on operation, maintenance, and ecological conservation. And it'll also be a lot of technical analysis and community engagement. So as a part of that community engagement, we'll have an advisory group. So I have a sign-up sheet if anyone's interested in being a part of that process. You can sign up to just get emails and be on our list for community engagement, the big workshops that we'll have. Or if you have any suggestions on advisors, that would also be amazing. We're also going to be hiring a few community liaisons to help us engage with the community more deeply. So with that, we'll have people who hopefully speak a variety of languages and can really get into the neighborhoods. So with that, I will hand it off to Matt. Okay.
Make sure you talk pretty loud because Bobby mentioned that it's hard to hear, so.
We don't want to upset Bobby.
So like you start all over.
Okay.
Even virtual Bobby.
You don't
want
that.
So how's this volume? Can everyone hear me? Great. All right, well, I'm Matthew McGuire. I'm a student here in Kansas City Design Center, and we will be introducing our project to you, primarily focused on the reinvention of the Kessler Park Reservoir. So this is kind of our layout, just our schedule for last semester and this semester. Currently, we're in the design development phase, and we've had a few public meetings last semester that have really helped us kind of nail down the more research side of things on this project, and now we've moved fully into pushing this as a design for the community. So there will be another public meeting after this one. That'll be in early April. I think we have a sign-up sheet that will be passed around either online or in person, but we have further information after this meeting that will be available to you all. So before we get into anything dealing with the schemes that you see around us, we have to talk about the existing conditions in the reservoir. And we have some photos here courtesy of Hoxie Collective just to show how the reservoir is now within Kessler Park. This is showing kind of an oblique that looks to the north. So there's two basins to the reservoir, and both of them have experienced pretty heavy decay and overgrowth via foliage. So within the reservoir, we have this graffiti condition that most of the public are using as kind of a local canvas. And then in the north basin as well, we see some graffiti kind of sparsely populating the ground level of this reservoir. So this is how it sits today. It used to hold water back in the early 1900s, but it no longer serves that purpose and has fallen into disrepair. So we have some goals and objectives for this project that we need to run through before we actually get into anything design oriented. So here are how those break down. We have a mission to provide a new vision for Kessler Park that will serve the surrounding neighborhoods. And we've done so by organizing our mission into 3 goals that include reintegrating Kessler Park into the order of the city, emphasizing the Kessler Park Reservoir as a significant amenity to the nearby communities, and ensuring Kessler Park can function as a neighborhood park while doing all of this. So now we incorporate community feedback into all of this design work that we're doing. So we really want to make sure that y'all know we're pulling from you, and we really want your feedback so that we can push this project so it better serves y'all. Throughout our various meetings, we have gathered valuable information from online meetings and public meetings to make sure that we're gathering correct information. So we've kind of broken that down into three different categories. This is what we kind of compiled from those. And then we've also addressed some of the primary concerns and secondary concerns of the community and compiled those as well, so that we're making sure that we have that readily available to us while we're designing. So before we get into design, we have to look at kind of the scales at which we're making sure we're paying attention to while we're diving into this project. So the first one kind of looks at Kessler Park's position in relation to the rest of the city that's inside the 435 loop. So this is the kind of scale we're talking about here with Kessler Park up here to the north, and then kind of all the collector streets that allow these other public spaces to access Kessler Park. So we have down here Swamp Park, in between there, the Country Club Plaza, Midtown, 18th and Vine, downtown, and then off to the north of Kessler Park, we have the East Bottoms. So we also looked at a few different scales for this. We're zooming in as we go through these. So this would be how this Kessler Park system can integrate with its more immediate neighborhoods. So here we're looking more about how it can serve the communities, and primarily the connections it has along Independence Avenue and also St. John. These serve as kind of the primary collector streets that allow for Kessler Park to be connected to the rest of these neighborhoods. And then we also have a much smaller scale that looks at Kessler Park as a system, how it relates to its neighborhoods through trails and then streets that provide connection and also kind of allow it to be disconnected. We've actually figured out that there's a street grid shift that allows or that prohibits Kessler Park from being a part of this larger Parks and Boulevard system within Kansas City. So we've also done a master plan, and this addresses both park conditions and entry to the park. So here we have something that we're proposing to the south of Kessler Park and our reservoir, which sits right here. But we want to limit vehicular traffic within the park, which is this dotted line right here that was primarily vehicular traffic, and we're turning it into pedestrian only to reclaim some of those spaces within the park. And here's an example of what some of those spaces are going to be that are preserved. We have moved parking down here, which is serviced by an actual feeder street rather than having people park along the streets that feed directly into the park. So disc golf will be preserved, and we have a few other proposals here, like a rain garden and new parking down here to service Kessler Park. So the master plan also functions as a framework for the schemes to fit within. And the plan addresses three strained aspects within the park, and these are water management, park entry, like I said before, and parking. So by moving parking outside of the park along Lexington Avenue here, which is only about a 5-minute walk from our reservoir site, it allows for vehicular access to be prohibited within the site and keeps vehicles out of
Is
the
there
site.
currently parking there, or that would be created as part of this?
There is currently parking here. We're proposing an expansion to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 spots.
And that's,
I was gonna say,
We call it parking.
This is continuous parking.
yeah.
and then along St. John's Avenue here, that will serve as our primary entrance to the park. Here's kind of a zoomed in version of that, what we're talking about. So the entrance to Kessler Park will be focused towards vehicles and pedestrians kind of separately. So along the street, instead of everything being commingled, we'll have a separation using greenways between pedestrian oriented traffic and vehicular oriented traffic. So this is what that would look like further down from this parking spot here that's along Lexington that will service from Prospect Avenue. And here's a site plan for what that parking looks like. We have angular parking along Lexington, and then this expansion to the parking that's there, but that's what it looked like. And this is East Reservoir Drive right here, which we are proposing to turn into just a pedestrian oriented walkway that's along St. John Avenue. So that's where you used to be able to get into the park.
How many spaces is that?
80?
158 or 58.
You're 58? I'm 58.
Okay, take it.
Right. So in addition to this, we also have water management. Watershed has been kind of a key issue for Kessler Park. We've noticed that areas like Cliff Drive are experiencing a lot of washout. So by taking advantage of the natural depressions that are kind of southwest to the reservoir, we've implemented a series of bioswales and rain gardens that will concentrate this water. And we're also proposing the use of some terrace landscaping to make this an actual occupiable space for the communities immediately off of St. John Avenue.
So on that spot back one, the farthest, the deep, yeah, that one. So there used to be, there's some sort of wall there. Are you gonna take that wall out and kind of take that whole area, or is it gonna be trying to be confined on just that little area?
I think we're splitting it up in here, and if I remember correctly, I believe we're proposing that this turns into a bridge.
It's currently a walk.
Yes, it's currently a walkway, so we'd elevate that and let water go under it.
Okay. Because I know, yeah, I know it's not too bad there, but the further west you go there, that drops off drastically.
Right.
In that whole area over there. So-
Right. Gotcha. So now to talk about design, we have 3 schemes that we feel are addressing this site in kind of some different crucial areas. So we have varying levels of invasiveness, with scheme number 1 being the least invasive to the existing reservoir, scheme number 3 being the most drastic in terms of changes. So these are our schemes. From left to right, we have preservation, intersection, and integration. So preservation is the least invasive and celebrates the existing environment within the reservoir. Intersection is moderately invasive and incorporates new incisions through the shell of the reservoir that interact with Kessler Park through a reworked trail system. And then the last scheme here, integration, is the most invasive and removes the south wall of the reservoir to physically connect its interior to the surrounding communities. So diving into scheme 1 here, the first thing we'll be talking about is how we've defined preservation. We have a few different things that we're wanting to honor in terms of preserving just the reservoir. This is the most introverted scheme as well, so it doesn't really touch us much of the outside of the park. We're just focusing on the reservoir. But this scheme works to broaden and deepen the understanding of the past, and that past means the past use of the reservoir, by celebrating the existing conditions and historical trajectory of the reservoir. So we're doing so to create a space that accommodates its future use while prioritizing past and present communities. So we have these 3 diagrams here just to show that the primary site concern of the scheme was to preserve the reservoir and its edge. So when I say we're not really altering anything around it, I really mean we're just preserving the shell of the reservoir. The existing circulation here is like how we mentioned in the master plan, where this red loop is being proposed as primarily pedestrian oriented traffic with some parking along here. And this will connect back to the larger trail system that runs through this part of Vista Park. And with that, we're also proposing a new circulation loop that runs through the reservoir and ties the reservoir back to the existing community. So walking. So we also have 2 site entries into the reservoir. One of these on the east kind of serves as the primary entry point. We have an overlook here to signify that it's actually where you're supposed to enter. This is along that walkway here that takes you from this parking lot to this entry here. And then on the west side here, we have a ramp that connects the south basin and west side of the reservoir to the communities along St. John Avenue. So we've also defined some elements that we're preserving within the reservoir, and we use those to our advantage, but those are preserving the foliage that's within there. And how we got to this conclusion was that this is all the foliage that's currently not invasive. There's a lot of invasive species within the reservoir that we're proposing be taken out. And then after we do that, this is the foliage we're left with. So this is our blank slate to work from. And then we're also working to preserve the community graffiti that we see in the reservoir. There are a number of artists within the community that value the use of this reservoir as local canvas. So that works with our design as well. We've also broken up the reservoir into a few different main topics that we want to address in different parts of this reservoir. So we have a preserved urban type, which we are proposing turns into a ramp that you have many community spaces along. We also have water management within the reservoir to work with the master plan. And we have community flex spaces in the south basin to kind of address larger scale events and community oriented events, as well as performance spaces if you want to hold farmers markets or theatrical type events, things of that nature. we have a few renderings just to show you what this would comprise of in the North Basin. This is kind of that urban hike experience where you're moving along a path and experiencing the foliage that we are recycling or upcycling. We also have kind of a few community spaces along this ramp to address the use, to address the foliage. I mean, to allow for, you know, outdoor classrooms and things of that nature in the North Basin that can be used by the community. And as kind of a wrap up to the first scheme, we also have water management and an overlook feature in the South Basin that works with these public spaces. And here we see kind of this rain garden feature going on here. So this is the end of the first scheme. We're going to move on to intersection. I believe we're going to hand it off to Braden.
My name is Braden. I'll give a brief introduction to the intersection scheme. The intersection scheme aims to connect the reservoir to the surrounding site of Kessler Park and to provide unique programmatic activities. Our conceptual idea started by finding ways to relate the immediate areas that surround the reservoir within the park and to the reservoir itself. The intention of the concept was to create physical and visual connections by implementing cuts that intersect the reservoir directly to the areas of focus within the park itself. On the left, you can see in the colors the highlighted areas of the park that we're wanting to connect. We have created cuts that go through and intersect the reservoir to bring relationship with the reservoir and the surrounding site. And here we're looking at from above these subtractive cuts that we have implemented into the reservoir. As we can see in the site plan in the center, the paths created that intersect through the reservoir reach out into the park, creating a stronger relationship between the reservoir and the immediate surroundings. Besides the site plan, here we can see images that show the experiencing entering the reservoir from the surrounding site. Within the reservoir, there are spaces that are defined by the cuts that were implemented, creating areas of interest that hold certain programs. There are primary spaces, secondary active spaces, and individual seating areas within the reservoir for a range of different activities and events. In the northern basin, the primary and secondary spaces are flexible and fixed for market and events. In the southern basin, the program is focused towards recreational activities that are flexible for public use. Along the cuts and above the programmed areas, we have incorporated shade structures that will allow for the space to be inhabitable year-round. And in this image here is that this is a view of the northern basin, where a potential event can occur, and the public can, here in this image, is observing from the seating area, defined by the pre-existing curve of the reservoir. Now in this image, we're in the southern basin of the reservoir, observing the open turf area where recreational activities will occur. As you can see, there's plenty of room for this portion of the reservoir to be flexible for an abundance of activities provided for public use. I'm going to hand it over to Taryn to go to the next. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Taryn Bogan-Boyer, and I will be introducing the third and final scheme of integration. So here's the axis of integration. And as mentioned before, we are removing the southern wall with the hope to really open it up to the community and allow for more accessibility, as well as really emphasizing a north-south access within the park. So the diagram further to your left, the orange space, we're really wanting to leave as intended. We don't want to mess with the perfectly good park space, but we are wanting to do more of an intervention with the blue spaces to really help open up the park, as I mentioned. The park is a really large space, and because of that, we broke our scheme up into zones because we do have such a huge space. So we're starting with our entry plaza, moving into our front lawn, our southern basin, which we're planning to use as a flexible space. We have a natural interference to kind of promote wildlife, as well as just like plants and pollinators. We have a middle wall, a northern amphitheater, which really inflects onto our northern pavilion, which would house the park's facilities, which it's currently lacking. So this is kind of our overall site plan, and the two renderings, the lower one shows our entry plaza to really help find the park. Right now, there's not a lot of signage or a really good place to denote that this is a park. And then the upper image shows kind of just like what it would be like to be on one of our paths that lead to the reservoir. This lower image, we have nodes on each one, which will represent renderings that we're taking in the next slide. So our first rendering shows our southern basin. And this is intended to be a flexible space with movable canopies. And this rendering in particular shows the artist block within the community. So moving it off of Lexington, which it's on currently, and potentially housing it within the reservoir. Our next image is taken within our northern amphitheater, which shows our stage, our stair ramp that would provide some seating, as well as our north pavilion. And this final rendering is taken from the top of the north pavilion, which the intention is to house park facilities, as well as get you up to get views of the park, downtown, and even the east bottoms, which would be behind you in this rendering. And we would love to hear back from you. If you think of any questions later, you can reach us at this email, which is found on our website. You can contact us through Facebook or any of our other social medias. But currently, we really encourage you, for those for the Zoom end.
No, it's okay.
For our Zoom, we encourage you to follow this link or this QR to really go and fill out a questionnaire we have for you. Those of you here, you're more than welcome to fill this out, but we'd love for you to circle around to each group and really interact with us and give us your feedback. We really appreciate it.
And for those of you on Zoom, if you're having trouble with the QR code, I have pasted the link in the event page on the website, so you can find it there.
Does that QR code let them kind of go around and look? for
So the
something?
QR code, they've been zooming into the presentation,
Right.
but the QR code lets them leave feedback because I'm gonna shut off the Zoom once you guys start circulating.
So I want to thank all of our students for the presentation and those of you who are with us today. And as Karen mentioned, open up to feedback and input. The important thing I just want to stress is what we have shared with you, ideas in unfolding, there are no definite ideas. We are really kind of committed to receive your feedback and input. And these ideas are going to shape and evolve as we receive your guidance on the project. This is just preliminary suggestions. Maybe just to reiterate once again, these three different schemes are three different versions of how Reservoir could be repurposed and the scales at which it can serve the communities, from something that's immediately related to the community in the first scheme to the final one that is really kind of serves the community on a daily basis, but also becomes a regional venue, allows for possibility of making that Kessler Park and the reservoir is one of those major public venue destinations on the city scale. So again, we are open to feedback and input, and I want to thank everybody who attended online and hope you can provide us with the feedback and input. Yes, Evan.
If we had any questions about some of the presentations, and I had one about it being able to be used year-round or heating capacities, will we be able to get those questions
Right.
answered?
Right, and then maybe I would ask if you guys at this point have any general questions that concerns all that we presented, we can address them, but other than that, we would ask you to engage with students on individual ones. So I don't know if there are any general questions at this point. If not, I want to thank again students for the presentation, the good work, and we can just open it up to you guys. Next, we have cookies and soda, so you cannot miss that kind of a treat. Stick around about either feedback and info. Thank you.
I'm thinking there's going to be snacks.
Yeah, you know what, it's